A massive dark magic swept across the world, devouring all cities and lives in its path. In the darkness, countless winged demons lurked, ready to capture and devour humanity. However, at this moment, a woman suddenly stood up. She shone brightly all over her body, and wherever she went, all darkness dissipated. People called her the Sun Caller, but the woman's real name was Lena. A few months ago, she was an ordinary cartographer in the Empire's First Legion. Every day, she had a close relationship with Jack from the same legion. They both came from an orphanage in Zuma. They were both lovers and siblings. As they grew older, they left the orphanage. By chance, they enlisted together to serve the Empire. Here, they learned some truths that weren't known outside. The Empire was now divided into two halves, East and West, divided by a huge magic barrier shadow abyss in the middle. It is said that this is a trace left by a magical war centuries ago. To this day, it is still filled with raging dark magic. There are even many magical servants, winged demons. Those monsters would capture any humans who entered by following sounds. Thus, missions into the Shadow Abyss have always been the most dangerous within the Legion. Fortunately, up until today, Lena and Jack had never been assigned such tasks. At this moment, Jack was wrestling with other soldiers. As the best scout of the First Legion, such competitions were usually easy for him. However, today, he encountered some tough opponents. Originally, Jack could win a prize and leave after defeating his opponent, but at this moment, a soldier from the Second Legion spoke up to stop him, and he demanded a match against Jack. Upon seeing the soldier's unique uniform, everyone instinctively refused. However, this soldier from the Second Legion raised his hand and released a blast of sand and stones, intending to provoke Jack and the others. Seeing that they didn't take the bait, he continued to taunt them, yet he never received the challenge he sought. It's no wonder, for he was a soldier of the Second Legion, known to the world as a mage. After the magical war hundreds of years ago, mages became targets of public outcry. Despite possessing various magical abilities, they couldn't always guard against ambushes from every corner. Fortunately, at this time, General Kerrigan, also a mage, formed the Second Legion to protect his fellow mages. Here, they could serve the Empire without fear of persecution from those around them. Thus, the entire Second Legion was composed of mages. That is why Jack and the others reacted in such a way. Upon seeing the soldier's robe, after the brief interlude, the soldiers were ready to begin another busy day. Under General Kerrigan's announcement, everyone learned that a procurement task was about to begin. A group of soldiers needed to be dispatched to the Western Empire, at the other end of the Shadow Abyss, to procure various supplies. This meant there was a high probability that someone would sacrifice again. Soon, the mission list was issued, and Jack happened to be on it. Upon hearing this news, Lena couldn't even eat her lunch. Jack learned about this situation, and decided to bring her some delicious food. So, he snuck into the Second Legion's soldiers' tents to get some unique food from these mages. Before he could even start, he was caught red-handed. The mage named Zoya said nothing further. After learning Jack's intentions, because she was also on the mission list, she didn't know if she would return alive. At this moment, Zoya wanted to relieve her stress, so she proactively removed her robe and invited Jack to share a good time with her. However, Jack was constantly thinking about Lena, so he fled the tent without looking back. Lena thought that Jack might never return from this. Her heart couldn't help but feel sorrow, so she made a bold move and burned part of the map of the West. Then, under the guise of cartography, she volunteered to accompany the soldiers to the Western Empire to draw related content. Soon after, the team set out. A large sand ship slowly sailed into the Shadow Abyss, driven by the Wind Mages. As soon as they entered, all light immediately vanished. Moreover, the outer perimeter of the sand boat was filled with the roar of monsters. However, they couldn't emit any light, or else they would attract the winged demons' attacks. Such a journey tested the soldiers' willpower immensely. Those with weak resolve quickly succumbed. One soldier trembled uncontrollably, and was ultimately destroyed by terror. He defied orders, and lit a kerosene lamp. In the next moment, he was grabbed by a winged demon. However, the consequences were far from over. The fallen kerosene lamp ignited the deck of the sand ship. The entire team became like torches in the dark, quickly attracting the surrounding winged demons. In an instant, the team suffered heavy losses. Some soldiers attempted to jump overboard to escape, but at this moment, Lena, who was attacked by the winged demons, suddenly showed unusual signs all over her body. Meanwhile, in the 2nd Legion's camp, Kerrigan looked at Lena with confusion in his heart. However, according to the returning soldiers, she had unleashed a dazzling light that instantly annihilated all the winged demons. This allowed them to escape the shadow abyss. However, Lena had no answers to Kerrigan's questions. In the end, he could only use a very risky method: to use the magical ring in his hand to slice open Lena's arm and check her magical talent. This confirmed Lena's identity as a mage, but it also revealed the dazzling light to everyone. Although Kerrigan knew that a sun caller would appear in legend, who could use the power of the sun to dispel the darkness of the shadow abyss. However, those ordinary soldiers and enemy nations were unaware, and would likely believe that a powerful mage had emerged. Thus, Lena's current situation was dangerous. Kerrigan quickly arranged for the soldiers of the 2nd Legion to secretly escort Lena to the palace. However, what Kerrigan didn't know was that prior to this, the Western Empire had already learned of Lena's secret, because the soldier who jumped ship that day had actually crossed the shadow abyss. He arrived at the Western Empire on the expected day of the mission. Seeing that only one person had come, they realized that the team had been attacked. However, due to his experiences in the abyss, the soldier had completely lost his sanity. He was unable to communicate normally. The Western Empire didn't pay attention to this soldier, which led to him being cast into the streets, targeted by a group of malicious individuals. In the Western Empire, there was a city called Kaitaden that, due to its developed trade network, gathered all kinds of people from all walks of life. This led to the emergence of various illegal enterprises. It also attracted many peculiar individuals. For example, there was a sharpshooter who had precise aim but never shot at heads. There was also a tavern owner who was a cripple but enjoyed stealing and collecting. And there was a devout religious follower who worked as an assassin known as Nightblade. Not long ago, this team received news that a wealthy man offered a high price to hire a team to search for something in the Eastern Empire. This reward was enough for all of them to live a prosperous life. Therefore, the leader, Black Hand, decisively accepted the task. However, this mission had an additional requirement. The team needed to bring a mind seer, a type of special mage. There was no equivalent of the 2nd Legion in the Western Empire. So, mages remained targets of public scorn. They were hardly ever seen, let alone the rare mindseers. However, Black Hand did know of one. She was a girl from a brothel who used her abilities to attract many customers on a daily basis. So it wasn't a secret. Thus, they had to act quickly, similar to Black Hand and his group. Another criminal gang also heard about the mission. They set their sights on the same woman. They first kidnapped the brothel owner and forced her to sell her business. Only then did they go after the girl. At this time, Black Hand had already found the mind seer directly and kidnapped him with high profits. By the time the rival gang showed up, Black Hand and his crew had already arrived at the task issuer's home. Not far away was the insane soldier. The mind seer could search the soldier's memories to understand what had happened. Everyone learned that the team had been attacked by winged demons, and a girl had erupted in dazzling light, instantly destroying all the winged demons. The girl's name seemed to be Lena, and she was a cartographer accompanying the team. Besides this soldier, all other survivors had returned the way they came. They had now reached the Eastern Empire. After learning all this, Black Hand immediately executed the soldier. Now they needed to figure out how to cross the shadow abyss. Shortly after, in Black Hand's tavern, there was a guest with an accent from the Eastern Empire. However, this guy was very weak and couldn't possibly cross the abyss alone. Thus, there was only one explanation. He had safely arrived here by some unknown method. Black Hand and his crew immediately approached him and successfully obtained the person's background through seemingly casual communication. Originally, there was a smuggler in the area, nicknamed the Commander. He specialized in smuggling and human trafficking, including getting people across the shadow abyss. As for how he did it, the man wasn't clear, because during the process, he had his eyes covered and ears stuffed the entire time. But even so, Black Hand was very satisfied. He immediately went to find this commander. At this moment, the assassin Nightblade received a new mission. The target was a human trafficker. The employer promised a very good price. However, if the mission failed, a hefty penalty would have to be paid. Thus, Nightblade readily accepted. However, after subduing the trafficker, Nightblade didn't act immediately. Instead, she first asked if he knew the whereabouts of her brother. It turned out that Nightblade's brother had been abducted by traffickers when he was young. She had been searching for him all these years.
Running those circles, really? You're likely off the longshoreman, Stephen?
Just then, Black Hand arrived at the scene. It turned out that this man was the smuggler, known as the Commander. Based on the information obtained before Nightblade, Black Hand could easily guess that someone was obstructing him from behind. The prime suspect was another criminal gang. They were robbed of their business by Black Hand, so they deliberately created these troubles. Now that the plan had been uncovered, Black Hand didn't blame Nightblade. Instead, he paid her penalty for the mission. After that, he took his companions and prepared to cross the Shadow Abyss. Meanwhile, Lena, escorted by many mages of the Second Legion, was traveling by carriage to the palace. To be safe, they dressed her in the Second Legion's robe. This magical robe had bulletproof properties. They hadn't gone far when they were ambushed by a group of people. The path-clearing soldiers from the First Legion were shot dead by hidden arrows. The remaining mages were also fiercely attacked. From their attire, it could be guessed that the attackers were hunters from the enemy nation to the north. They were well-trained and had a lot of experience dealing with mages. In no time, the group was pushed back. Just then, General Kerrigan arrived in time. After driving the hunters back, Kerrigan quickly evacuated with Lena under his protection. The rest of the journey went very smoothly. Lena successfully arrived at the palace. Lena, who came from an orphanage, experienced the life of high society for the first time. Every aspect of her life had dedicated servants to attend to her. There were even mages who could slightly apply their magic to eliminate the scars and skin blemishes on Lena's body. However, Lena insisted on keeping the scar on her palm. As for why, that will be set aside for now. Not long after, the king summoned Lena to the hall. Kerrigan knew it was her first time experiencing this, so he actively accompanied Lena. When the nobles saw Lena's appearance, they instinctively felt some resistance. It turned out that Lena's black hair and eyes were very similar to the people of the rival nation, Shu Han. As a result, the nobles here, including the king, were somewhat skeptical. However, after Lena displayed the powers of a suncaller, the king personally ordered that Lena receive the finest magical education in the palace. He was determined to train her to become the most powerful mage in the empire, and eventually destroy the Shadow Abyss, to reunify the empire. The prolonged state of division made him sense that the Western Empire was beginning to build up its military strength. Perhaps soon, they would start claiming their own territories. From that point on, Lena studied various courses in magic at the palace. The first skill she needed to master was close-quarters combat. As everyone knows, only living mages can deal damage. Thus, Lena's first lesson was physical training and hand-to-hand combat. Her opponent happened to be the Wind Mage, Zoya, perhaps recalling how Jack had looked down on her for Lena's sake, or maybe jealous of her current status. In any case, Zoya held no fondness for Lena, and even felt some disdain. Thus, she showed no mercy, and quickly knocked Lena to the ground. In addition to close combat skills, mages also need to learn a great deal of knowledge. The contents of an entire library are the essence of research from generations of mages. Among them are various methods to enhance one's power. The simplest method is to kill magical beasts and turn their corpses into various magical artifacts. This can quickly enhance the caster's strength. Moreover, according to the texts, it is best if the mage personally hunts them down, as this yields better results. Aside from these complex courses, the most important thing is mastering one's own magic. Lena has a dedicated teacher named Ball. Although the old lady is very strict, the results are also very evident. Soon, Lena was able to grasp her own magical power to ensure her peace of mind for growth. The protection for Lena within the palace was taken to the utmost level. There were dedicated tasters for her meals, a privilege reserved for royal members. This shows how much attention was given to Lena. However, she didn't like this kind of life. Meanwhile, Black Hand and his group also began their operations. They entered the Shadow Abyss. Under the commander's leadership, they cautiously avoided the minefields, and finally saw the commander's tool for smuggling into Shadow Abyss. It was a very old train. Once started, it could quickly traverse the abyss along the tracks. However, this thing made quite a bit of noise, and if they were unlucky, it would attract the nearby winged demons. But since nothing had happened so far, Black Hand and the others decided to take the gamble. And so, the train sped through the abyss with a few people aboard. They attracted many winged demons. Some monsters clung to the train, while others continuously slammed against the carriage. If they didn't take action, they would only destroy together with the train. In the end, the sharpshooter relied on his precise marksmanship to shoot through the window gaps and kill the winged demons outside. This allowed everyone to avert disaster. They finally reached the Eastern Empire with great difficulty. Originally, according to the plan, they were to contact an insider named Annie. She was also a mind seer and had some connections with the palace. However, they didn't expect that. A few days ago, Annie was suddenly attacked by the hunters. Now she has been detained on a ship and doesn't know where she will be taken. Therefore, when Black Hand and his group arrived, they found that the place had long been deserted. There were no clues about Annie anywhere. Their plan to enter the palace needed to be rearranged. Meanwhile, the imprisoned Annie was filled with worries about her future. At this moment, a young man walked into the room. Annie thought he was there to do something to her, and immediately began to scold him. However, in reality, the young man Matthew was a new member of the hunters, who, seeing the many imprisoned mages, was filled with confusion. He was only there to bring Annie some food, and hoped to communicate with her amicably. After being scolded, he could only leave helplessly. This marked the beginning of their connection. Not long after, the hunter's ship encountered a storm. All the crew members were busy at work. Matthew's superior was very worried that the mages might escape during this time, or cause trouble. Therefore, he ordered Matthew to execute all the imprisoned mages. Matthew hesitated. At the same time, Jack, stationed with the 1st Legion, hadn't seen his beloved Lena for a long time. He had written many letters, but had never received a reply from the palace. Although he was a little worried, he still believed in Lena. Not long after, when he heard that the palace had issued a mission to find the legendary 9-colored deer, he volunteered to participate. Jack knew very well that Lena had loved the 9-colored deer since childhood. This task was likely prepared for her, even if the process was difficult. Jack felt no fear whatsoever. In the end, only Jack and his 2 friends participated in the mission. The 9-colored deer was a mythical beast that almost no one had ever seen, so how to find it had become the first major challenge. However, Jack had an idea. Since it was winter, the 9-colored deer, being a legendary beast, must possess a high level of intelligence. So, by searching for the traces of herbivores, and considering whether they had enough food, they could significantly narrow down the search area. This sounds simple, but in reality, they needed to deal with potential snowstorms, and venture deep into the primitive jungle, as well as enemies from the north, and so on. This mission was fraught with difficulties, but no matter what hardships arose, Jack never entertained the thought of giving up. During this time, they encountered wave after wave of northern enemies. In the icy wilderness, they fought these barbarians in close combat. Their firearms even failed to function due to the cold. Fortunately, they managed to kill those enemies. However, Jack and his friends paid a heavy price. 2 longtime friends were killed. Jack looked at their bodies, tears streaming down his face. Yet the mission wasn't over. He couldn't return yet. Just then, Jack saw a tall deer-like beast appear ahead. It resembled the 9-colored deer described in legends. This discovery left Jack feeling mixed emotions. After enduring so many hardships, he had finally found his target. However, he didn't know that Lena in the palace had changed her heart. She had not received any of the letters Jack sent, and the letters Lena sent to Jack received no response at all. And this was all orchestrated by Kerrigan. He understood very well what Lena represented. Thus, he planned to bring her under his control. Cutting off her communication with Jack was just the first step. Next, Kerrigan launched a fierce attack on Lena again, taking care of her meticulously in daily life, and successfully shaping a considerate persona in front of her, through unintentional expressions of true feelings. But this wasn't enough. He needed to draw Lena into the benefit community he was creating. Therefore, Kerrigan took the opportunity to reveal his grand ambitions to her, and talked about the origins of Shadow Abyss. Many years ago, there was a legendary dark mage, whom people called the Dark Lord. Thus, he was chased by the enemy with heavy troops. Although the Dark Lord was powerful, he was still outnumbered. Out of desperation, he had to use a legendary forbidden spell. This allowed him to eliminate the king's pursuit. However, this spell had severe side effects. Ultimately, it resulted in the Shadow Abyss as it exists today. Kerrigan seized the opportunity to express that his greatest wish was to eliminate the Shadow Abyss and atone for everything done by the Dark Mage. As for forming the Second Legion, it wasn't only to protect his fellow mages, but also to compensate for the unfortunate mages affected by the Dark Lord. After this heartfelt revelation, Lena was indeed swayed by him.
I'm your solution.
From that point on, Lena began to practice magic even more diligently. She also started to hesitate about the scar on her palm. Back when she was in the orphanage, there were people who tested their magical potential. Lena didn't want to be separated from Jack, so she broke a bowl, and they each held a shard to keep the constant pain, making it impossible for her to concentrate. Thus, they managed to evade the magical potential test. Now, this scar that connected them had become a psychological barrier for her. In the end, Lena decided to have a mage cover the scar. Although it seemed to disappear temporarily, it was still there in reality. This could be seen as a reflection of Lena's inner self. On the surface, the scar was gone, and she no longer had the psychological burden. Lena began to actively respond to Kerrigan's advances. During this time, a plot against Lena quietly unfolded. Although Black Hand and his group had lost the insider Annie, they quickly came up with other plans. They learned that the palace was about to hold a winter celebration and would invite external performance troops to perform in the palace. They could take this opportunity to blend in. This would require several key actions. First, they needed to understand the layout of the palace. Then they could locate their target in the shortest time possible. Next, they needed to infiltrate the performing troupe. Black Hand and his group acted quickly. They first located the local archives. The blueprints of the palace were stored there. They only needed to cut the power supply to the archives to sneak in undetected. Nightblade quickly found the relevant documents and printed a copy, but how to take it out became a new challenge. The power system restored too quickly, and they couldn't possibly leave the same way. At this moment, Nightblade displayed remarkable skills. She boldly walked out behind the guards, walking right behind them. Then, when the bell rang, everyone quickly sabotaged the door lock and escaped from the archives. As for infiltrating the performing troupe afterward, it was even easier. They just needed to create a little distraction first.
Due to an unfortunate freak accident.
At this time, with the performance approaching, the troupe was in urgent need of personnel. Nightblade's slight display of strength could instantly kill the vast majority of acrobats. Additionally, the sharpshooter took the opportunity to show off as well, leaving the administrator dumbfounded. The two easily blended in. Not long after, at the winter celebration, using the identity of the performance troupe, Nightblade and others entered the palace. Black Hand disguised himself as a guard soldier and entered the palace in advance, using the blueprints they had stolen earlier. There were several locations inside that could very likely be Lena's hiding spots. One of them was a secret chamber. This hidden door was usually opened by alchemists through magic and didn't have a regular key. The experienced commander stated that he could use a powerful magnet to open the door. He then volunteered to enter and kidnap Lena. The others just needed to clear the way and prepare for the escape. Meanwhile, Lena was still unaware that danger was approaching. She was wearing the embroidered golden robe sent by Kerrigan to attend the grand ceremony. Due to Lena's identity as a Suncaller, she was the central figure of the celebration. Moreover, the celebration was originally held by the king to intimidate the envoys. At the celebration site, Lena performed a display of light magic as required, the radiant light dispelling the darkness, which drew waves of awe from the crowd. Even Nightblade, upon witnessing this scene, couldn't help but be captivated by Lena. She was already a devout believer. At this moment, she firmly believed that Lena was the savior sent by heaven. However, among the crowd, the envoys from the Western Empire looked somewhat grave. Clearly, this wasn't good news for them. Just then, an announcement interrupted everyone's thoughts. Kerrigan immediately left the celebration upon hearing it. So just now Jack arrived at the palace with the news of the 9-colored deer. When he saw that only Kerrigan had come, he immediately grew wary. Seeing Jack's wariness, Kerrigan didn't press further with questions. He casually asked a few questions about Lena to make Jack prove that he knew her. However, in reality, Kerrigan turned around and used the information he extracted from Jack to send Lena her beloved flowers. He prepared to take this opportunity to invite her to his room for a deeper conversation. At this moment, Lena was nearly won over by Kerrigan. Thus, she readily agreed to his request. This scene was witnessed by Blackhand and the others. The plan had changed, but they didn't inform the commander. At this moment, the commander saw a mysterious woman entering the secret chamber surrounded by many servants. Following the plan, he used the magnet to enter the room. However, after capturing the woman, he suddenly turned violent and killed her. It turned out that he had already been bribed by a general from the Eastern Empire to secretly reveal Blackhand's actions to them, and received a new mission to kill Lena on the spot. After the deed is done, he would take all the rewards for himself, and all of this had long been known to Blackhand and his group. That's why they didn't inform the commander immediately. At this moment, the commander still believed his plan was flawless, but the next moment, he realized that the woman was just a decoy. He sensed something was wrong, but was spotted by other servants. In desperation, the commander could only shoot to quickly kill them. However, the gunfire attracted more guards. In just a moment, he was overpowered by the guards. Meanwhile, in the palace, the chaos wasn't confined to this area. Jack, who was waiting in his room, was also attacked by a mysterious assassin. Relying on his skills as a scout, he successfully killed the attacker. But he understood that this place was extremely dangerous, and he couldn't stay, so he looked for an opportunity to escape the room. The assassin was actually a subordinate of Lena's teacher Ball. As for why she did this, it was another deeply hidden secret. Not long ago, Ball heard from her subordinates that Jack had come to the palace with news of the 9-colored deer, and that Kerrigan had already met with him. Ball immediately sensed trouble. She promptly arranged for someone to deal with Jack, and went to find Lena herself. Ball entered Kerrigan's room through a hidden passage. At this moment, only Lena was present. Kerrigan had temporarily left the room to deal with the assassin. Ball quickly took Lena away. Seeing the confusion on Lena's face, Ball took the initiative to explain the situation. Kerrigan was the Dark Lord who created the Shadow Abyss, and Ball was his mother. She knew her son's character very well, and could easily guess that Kerrigan intended to control Lena as a tool for his domination of the world. This conspiracy had been planned for at least hundreds of years, so once Lena got involved, she would have almost no chance to resist. Upon hearing this, Lena also realized something was wrong. She hurriedly escaped the palace through the secret passage. By the time Kerrigan discovered this, it was already too late. Moreover, Ball blocked his way from behind. He could only watch as Lena escaped. However, Lena's luck was indeed a bit bad. The box where Lena hid was the escape tool for Blackhand and his group, so when she emerged, she was already surrounded by Blackhand and his 2 companions. Lena sensed that something was off as well. She decisively cast a flash spell and quickly escaped the scene, while Blackhand and the others were blinded. However, Nightblade, who had long been on guard, was unaffected and allowed them to leave. Lena wandered alone in the city and provoked harassment from some thugs, but she was no ordinary girl. Her mastery of light magic was exceptional. Such lowly characters couldn't harm her in the slightest. To evade Kerrigan's pursuit, Lena fled all the way into the jungle and met Jack, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. Seeing each other again, their hearts were filled with mixed emotions. Each believed the other had betrayed them, especially Jack, who thought he had risked his life for Lena, only to find she had arranged for his assassination. Lena had no idea what Jack was talking about. After some argument, they finally realized that it was all Kerrigan's manipulation. The barriers between them vanished in an instant. Jack voluntarily recounted that he had found the 9-colored deer for her, and revealed its specific location. However, Lena paused for a moment. Although she loved the 9-colored deer, she had never asked anyone to find it for her. Clearly, this was another scheme by Kerrigan. But now, she needed to quickly strengthen herself for self-defense. The 9-colored deer became an excellent option. Under Jack's guidance, the 2 quickly headed to the discovery site. Meanwhile, Kerrigan was continuously searching for their whereabouts. He tracked down Blackhand and the others. Based on the carriage that left the palace, Kerrigan immediately brought 2 trusted subordinates to capture the 3. At this time, Blackhand and his companions were arguing about Nightblade letting Lena go, but suddenly, the carriage outside exploded. The 3 instantly stopped their conversation and realized that someone was pursuing them. Thus, they hurriedly retreated. However, they were confronted head-on by Kerrigan and his group. Black Hand and his companions split up to escape. Naturally, Kerrigan also pursued them separately. One of the pursuers after the sharpshooter was a mindbender. This was somewhat tricky for the sharpshooter. Even when facing such a formidable opponent, he still maintained the habit of not shooting the target's head. The robe worn by the mage was all equipped with bulletproof properties. The sharpshooter's attacks couldn't inflict any damage on the mindbender. Instead, he found himself in quite a predicament. Fortunately, the sharpshooter was skilled. Although he didn't shoot the mage's head, he continually fired at the area around the heart. While the robe could block the bullets, it couldn't eliminate the impact. In the end, the mindbender was severely injured and collapsed to the ground. Compared to the sharpshooter's predicament, Nightblade had a much simpler time. Her opponent was a fire mage with tremendous destructive power. Nightblade hid herself, and when the mage let his guard down, she took the chance to stab him fatally. Her technique was clean and decisive. He was the fastest to shake off her pursuers among the three. As for Black Hand, he was in a dire situation. He was personally pursued by Kerrigan, and Black Hand was also a cripple. There was almost no chance for him to shake off his pursuer. Kerrigan thought he had the upper hand. However, Black Hand had a trick up his sleeve. In addition to his previous identities, he was also a top-notch magician. He carried a number of magical props with him. Suddenly, with the detonation of a flash grenade, Kerrigan had to momentarily evade the brilliance. However, this brief delay meant that Black Hand had already vanished from sight. Nevertheless, this trip wasn't entirely fruitless for Kerrigan. He didn't find Lena with Black Hand. Clearly, she had already escaped from these people. Therefore, Kerrigan continued to send his subordinates to search. Not long after, he received another piece of intel. Lena had entered the jungle, and coincidentally, Jack was also in that same jungle. Kerrigan speculated that the two were likely acting together, and their target was likely the nine-colored deer. So all he needed to do was take his men north, to wait for them. Meanwhile, in the vast northern sea, on a piece of shipwreck debris, Matthew opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was the captive Annie. Previously, Matthew had received orders to execute all the mage captives. After much hesitation, he decided to let them go, and it was this decision that saved his own life. When Annie saw Matthew, he was already on the verge of death. It was Annie who used magic to accelerate Matthew's heartbeat, allowing him to regain consciousness. However, this wasn't the time for reminiscing. The northern region is perpetually cold, and they were both wet. If they didn't quickly find shelter, they would soon become ice sculptures. Fortunately, they were lucky. Not far away, there was a cabin. It served as a decent temporary shelter. The cramped space and warm campfire, along with the vague emotions in this environment, their relationship rapidly developed. In no time, they ignited a different kind of spark. When they woke up again, Matthew found it hard to speak about their previous experiences, but Annie didn't seem to care. She even kept teasing him. Their relationship grew even closer. However, the long-term education as a hunter left Matthew with some doubts about Annie. He worried that she might use her mindbender abilities to control her previous behavior, to control his previous actions, until a certain moment, Annie accidentally stepped into empty space and nearly fell into the abyss. Matthew instinctively pulled her back. There was hardly enough time for her to cast a spell. It was then that he realized his true feelings. Afterward, the two crossed the ice fields and arrived at a town in the north. Most towns in the north held hostility toward mages, with only a few remaining neutral. The town they were in was one of those few. Matthew wanted to settle down there and stay with Annie forever. Upon hearing his thoughts, Annie agreed. Along the way, she had also fallen in love with this man. However, just as they decided to be together forever, Matthew suddenly fainted, and a few people slowly approached them. Annie recognized by their attire that those men were soldiers from the Imperial 2nd Legion. Before she could figure out what was happening, the soldiers began to question her.
Something you could have done hours ago, am I right, Nina? Are there more nearby? Is that why you haven't killed him?
From the soldiers' account, Annie learned that they were originally there to rescue her, but upon seeing her close relationship with Matthew, so they had refrained from taking action. Now, with both witnesses and evidence present, they were about to arrest Annie for treason. At this moment, Annie's mind raced quickly. Suddenly, she came up with an idea. Annie shouted at the people around her. She claimed that Matthew was a human trafficker. Some bounty hunters immediately surrounded them and intended to take Matthew to prison. The soldiers from the 2nd Legion tried to intervene, but they were outnumbered. Moreover, fighting in a neutral town could easily spark a war. In the end, they could only watch as Matthew and Annie left. Although they had passed this hurdle with the 2nd Legion, there were still more troubles ahead. When Matthew woke from his coma, he found himself in a cage. Considering his sudden fainting earlier, he naturally assumed that he had been ambushed by Annie. The feelings they had painstakingly built thus created some distance between them. Annie knew that in order to resolve the misunderstanding, she had to rescue Matthew first, before she could explain, but being alone, she was too weak to accomplish such a task. So, Annie used her identity as a mindbender to start looking for allies. Not far away on the same ship were Black Hand and his companions, as well as Lena and Jack. As for why they were there, it goes back to a week ago. At that time, Lena was with Jack, heading north to track the 9-colored deer. After much effort, they finally found their target, but Lena felt a pang of conscience. By chance, she found that even if she didn't kill the 9-colored deer, she could increase her magic by touching it. However, before she could fully experience it, she was ambushed by Kerrigan and his group. The 9-colored deer was struck down on the spot, and Jack nearby was severely injured. To protect her beloved, Lena unleashed a powerful surge of magic that instantly drove the attackers back. However, in the next moment, General Kerrigan appeared not far away. Although Lena's light magic was effective against his dark magic, the disparity in their strengths was simply too great. She had no chance of winning. However, Kerrigan didn't immediately attack. Instead, he proposed a deal.
Give me the stag, and I'll have my healer safe.
Thus, Lena gave up resisting and submitted to Kerrigan. Not long after, Kerrigan transformed the corpse of the 9-colored deer into a complete set of magical artifacts. There were 2 parts in total. The amplifier portion was carried by Lena, while the piece in Kerrigan's hand was the controller, which could manipulate the magical power within Lena at will. As the magical ritual was completed, in a certain sense, Kerrigan had simultaneously mastered both dark magic and powerful light magic. He finally revealed his true self. The conspiracy he had plotted for hundreds of years began to surface. A few days later, Kerrigan prepared a gigantic sand vessel and invited the envoys from various countries in the palace to demonstrate the power of the Dawnbringer to them and completely eliminate the Shadow Abyss. The envoys from various countries accepted the invitation to witness this historic moment. However, a few uninvited guests had slipped in. They were Black Hand and his companions. Originally, after escaping from Kerrigan, they had planned to take a train back to the Western Empire, but they discovered that the train had been destroyed. Clearly, this was the doing of the Western Empire's general. Just when they felt helpless, they heard about Kerrigan's plans, so the 3 knocked out 3 envoys and impersonated them, attempting to cross the Shadow Abyss. At first, things went exactly as Kerrigan had described. Zoya summoned a strong wind to drive the sand vessel into the abyss, and the Dawnbringer was merely a spell that opened a luminous passage through the Shadow Abyss. Everyone on board was in awe, and they urged the Dawnbringer to continue. However, at this moment, Kerrigan changed his demeanor entirely.
All countries will answer to us.
Lena also showed a look of terror, although she had long been aware of Kerrigan's plans. After Lena was controlled, Kerrigan had told her numerous times about his past experiences and his ambitious dreams. Thus, Lena learned the true origin of the Shadow Abyss. Hundreds of years ago, Kerrigan, as the strongest dark mage, participated in the Empire's wars as a mercenary. With his powerful magic, wherever he went, he was unstoppable. He quickly brought victory to the Empire. However, his strength didn't bring him glory. Instead, it aroused the king's suspicion. He immediately ordered a nationwide hunt for all mages. Kerrigan was the top target. Soon after, a small squad located Kerrigan's hideout. Although he used his extraordinary strength to slay them all, his lover died in that ambush as well. From that moment on, Kerrigan was filled with rage. He believed that only by establishing a kingdom for mages could the rights of mages be protected. To this end, he scoured various tomes, finally discovering a forbidden spell that could transform enemies into magical servant-winged demons. Not long after, Kerrigan was besieged by a large army. However, he felt no panic whatsoever. and decisively used the forbidden magic from the book to turn all his pursuers into winged demons. However, after the magic was completed, an unexpected change occurred. The dark magic within Kerrigan went out of control. It ultimately formed the Shadow Abyss that spanned the continent for hundreds of years. Now, back to the present. Kerrigan wielded two immense powers. The establishment of the Mage Empire was within his grasp. This led to the events that followed. Kerrigan forced the envoys present to acknowledge the establishment of the Mage Empire. Otherwise, not only would they, but also the countries behind the envoys, would be annihilated by Kerrigan. However, Kerrigan was still unaware that he was in a precarious situation. The three members of Black Hand hiding in the cabin, and Jack, who was also hiding inside, had formed an alliance, and were ready to rescue Lena. Outside the Shadow Abyss, the true ruler of the Western Empire, General Zayton, the commander of the First Legion, had gathered countless troops, ready to eliminate Kerrigan inside. If he truly destroyed the Shadow Abyss, then Zayton's rebellion plan would collapse. However, in the next moment, Kerrigan started using magic to manipulate Shadow Abyss, in order to force these messengers to surrender. In the next instant, Zayton's soldiers suffered a devastating blow. Seeing Kerrigan's brutal methods, Jack, hiding in the cabin, couldn't hold back any longer. He burst out of the cabin with his gun, and fired repeatedly at Kerrigan. However, his blatant assassination attempt was quickly thwarted by the mages on the sand vessel. Moreover, due to Jack's exposure, Black Hand and the others fell into a tough battle. The scene became chaotic in an instant. At this moment, the mage Zoya, who controlled the sails, also joined the fray. However, she chose to help Black Hand and the others. Originally, Zoya's hometown was in the Western Empire, and was likely to be controlled by the recently deceased Kerrigan. This sparked her idea of rebellion. In the midst of the chaos, Kerrigan was caught off guard by Nightblade, and was stabbed in the chest. However, with his immense magical power, Kerrigan was hardly affected. In fact, he retaliated with a spell that swallowed half of the sand vessel into darkness. The sounds of battle quickly attracted a swarm of winged demons, already at a disadvantage. Nightblade and the others now had to deal with those winged demons. The situation was precarious. After dealing with Nightblade and the others, Kerrigan turned back to prepare to take Lena away, but he was suddenly ambushed by her. Using Nightblade's dagger, she directly destroyed Kerrigan's controller. Once Lena freed herself from her restraints, she immediately used light magic to dispel the surrounding darkness and winged demons. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, Kerrigan attempted to forcibly abduct Lena, but at this critical moment, Jack sacrificed himself and forcefully knocked Kerrigan off the sand vessel. The two continued to grapple in the darkness of the Shadow Abyss. For a time, neither could gain the upper hand over the other. Thus, Kerrigan seized the opportunity to launch a surprise magical attack. At the same time, Jack picked up his gun and aimed it straight at Kerrigan. Surprisingly, Kerrigan was wearing a bulletproof vest, and the bullets couldn't penetrate it. However, this caused Kerrigan's magic to go awry, and it failed to hit Jack. Just as the two were about to engage in combat again, a winged demon attracted by the noise seized the opportunity to grab Kerrigan. Thus, this battle came to an end. Finally, the sand vessel sailed out of the Shadow Abyss under Lena's protection. However, the Western Empire had now been largely consumed by darkness. Lena was temporarily unable to dispel such a massive Shadow Abyss, so she and Jack decided to enhance their skills. Through travel, the three members of Black Hand happened to be traveling the same way. However, they needed to prepare before returning to Ketten. At least one mindbender was necessary, otherwise it would be difficult to explain to the mission issuer. Meanwhile, Kerrigan had finally managed to emerge from the Shadow Abyss. Although his plan to establish a mage empire had collapsed, it was a blessing in disguise. He had inadvertently gained the ability to control winged demons. It remains to be seen what kind of bloody storm this will unleash. The film ends here. Shadow and Bone Season 1 was released in 2021. This series is adapted from the Grishaverse trilogy of novels. As an adaptation, the plot changes are quite significant. Moreover, perhaps due to the age of the original novels, it feels somewhat out of sync with modern aesthetics. However, the actors' performances are commendable, especially the portrayal of the antagonist, Kerrigan, who exudes a unique charisma. Overall, It is a fairly good fantasy work. It is suitable for watching in your leisure time. If you enjoy my channel, please click to subscribe.